We'd like to call the regular board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia.
Yes.
Mr. Fellis.
Yes.
Mr. Smith. Present. Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. And if we can, a motion to adjust the agenda and skip the Pledge of Allegiance since we've already done that. I need a motion for that, please.
Make a motion to skip the Pledge of Allegiance. Support.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Fellis.
Support, yes.
Mr. Demakia.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. Recognition of visitors. Welcome back, everyone, to our regular meeting, and officially welcome to our new board members, Mr. Mitch Fallis and re-elected Mr. Tony Demakia. A motion for approval of minutes from Tuesday, December 27th, 2011.
And December 14th also.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And December 14th, 2011.
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion?
Yes, in reviewing the minutes for the December 27th meeting, I found what I think is a possible problem. The executive session said that you went in for a number of reasons, one of them E on the, which is supposedly required by federal, state, or law or rules. Didn't specify what those were. But in the call for the meeting, it said that you would be going into executive session for the purpose of discussing the treasurer's contract and architects, selecting architects. In the publication called Sunshine Law for Schools, published by the Ohio School Boards Association, there is an item that says, it doesn't say anything, it reads, what are some examples of discussion items that may not be lawfully discussed in executive session? Number 3 on that list is hiring an architect or lawyer. So going into executive session to discuss an item that is not lawfully discussable in a executive session causes a problem. And it's my understanding that any action taken by a board following an illegal executive session is null and void. Therefore, I would suggest that someone get a legal opinion as to A, was that an illegal executive session? And B, if so, is any action following that session null and void? And in this case, that would be Mr. Weber's contract. I think you need some clarification on that. I don't know whether you want to go to the city law director or the prosecutor or the Ohio Attorney General's office, but I do believe it needs to be clarified. Thank you.
Well, with regard to the architect piece, there was no action taken. As it relates to the treasurer, we would ask through the superintendent's office that Mr. Giardini would render a legal opinion, and if we can get a second opinion from the city or someone.
I would ask for a written one.
A written opinion?
Mm-hmm. It takes 2 board members to do that.
Okay, we'll probably have more, so if those seem reasonable, and that gives us whatever protection needed. If we have done something that does violate the Sunshine Law, we would also request that our attorney tell us what we need to do to reconcile that, and no objection there. So that's, we've done that. Now there's a motion on the floor for the approval of the minutes.
A question before we move forward. As a new board member, is it appropriate for me to vote on minutes in which I was not legally a board member, I guess is my question.
Through the chair, I think it would be appropriate that you abstain from voting on it since you would not have any idea whether or not they're accurate.
Thank you, Attorney G.
Yeah, I have
Appreciate
a
it.
question. I have a question for Mr. Giardini on the same note. I was not present at the meeting.
Same thing.
Yeah, so unless you separate the two meetings in the motion, I will just abstain.
Right.
Thank you.
Is there a request, Mr. Smith, to separate them, or would you?
No, I'm fine. I'll just abstain. That's fine.
So there's a recommendation and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Fellis?
Yes.
You have
You have
to
to
abstain.
Abstain.
I missed I request to abstain from voting, thank you.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Abstain?
Mr. Williams?
Yes. This time, we, in old business, Dr. Branham and Mr. Weber and their staff have some presentations. So, Dr. Branham, we would turn this portion of the meeting over to you. And Mr. Weber.
Under the old business items, we have technically 3 presentations tonight.
I'm sorry. Can you all hear him out there? I didn't think so. Can you just grab a mic that works?
I'm sorry, that works. We'll share, Mr. Weber. We will have 3 presentations. They're not too lengthy, I don't think. As you recall, through the old business, we were moving into a cost savings plan to eliminate a $12 million deficit that this school district is facing. We've been working on that plan for approximately 3.5 months. Next slide. Okay. Again, this is a presentation on a cost savings plan to eliminate the $12 million deficit. Obviously, the goals of this plan are to fix the $12 million deficit in various ways and recommendations. And our goal, of course, is to maintain long-term educational effectiveness and financial solvency. At the last board meeting, this board asked for a presentation on minimum standards, what this school district is required to offer our students, what programs, what services. To this end, I'm going to introduce Dr. Stephen Sturgill, who's been working on this presentation for several weeks, spent some time over the Christmas holidays, to present this to us tonight. Dr. Sturgill, minimum standards.
Okay. Thank you. The minimum standards are taken from Ohio Administrative Code, chapters 3301-35. Okay, next slide. Okay, go right there. With the basic minimum academic standards, all districts could go ahead and implement 20 credits required for graduation. Currently, Lorain City Schools offers 22 high school credits for graduation, but going to minimum, the state only requires 20 credits. In this, students would only take core academic classes. For instance, in English, they would get English 9, English 10, English 11, English 12. In math, they would get Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. Currently, only Social Studies, 3 credits, and in Science, 3 credits only. Minimal elective core courses would be offered. It would be based on number of teacher preps and core offerings delivered in the classroom. Some of these might be, film as literature or forensics, but again, it'd be based on the minimum offered and how many kids actually need to take the core classes. Also, when we look at the schedule, all students would have the same scheduled classes. Again, minimal elective offerings. So if you're a 9th grade student, you would pretty much get the same schedule as every other 9th grade student. Also, we would have the integration of fine arts, PE, foreign language, technology, family and consumer sciences, and business education requirements into regular core curriculum at all levels. Pretty much what this means that we would have no separate classes for the above. That means we don't need a teacher to teach these courses. It would be actually integrated into the core curriculum. Also, we would have the requirements for a study of economics and financial literacy would be integrated into the regular core curriculum at all levels. All buildings will be closed after instructional day. With that, with the closing of buildings, you would have no clubs or extracurricular activities and definitely no sports. The ratio of teachers to student would be at least 1 to 25 district-wide in regular student population, and we underline the at least because if we go to bare minimum, we were looking at 30 to 35 to 1. Shared principals of less than 15 full-time equivalent teachers, no more than 2 schools per principal. What this means is that we could share principals among 2 schools. Also, we would have 2.5-hour kindergarten classes because right now, full day kindergarten is not required by the Howard Department of Education. Also, it's for school. It's a 5-hour school day, excluding lunch for grades 1 through 6, and it's a 5.5-hour school day, excluding lunch for grades 7 through 12.
Do we have any questions from the board in regard to the minimum standards as required by the Ohio Department of Education?
Under what conditions would we be more or less forced to go to minimum standards? What would trigger something like that?
If technically we got to a certain point in, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Weber, in our deficit program, or that we took no action, which of course will not be my recommendation tonight, to a certain deficit, that the Ohio Department of Education would come in and proclaim fiscal emergency and technically take over the school district and move to minimum standards. Obviously, this is a place that we do not want this school district to be in. It's not a place where we want to go. And technically, this will obviously lead to my next presentation on what we need to do over the next 2 months.
Now, based on what you said, it is not necessary, however, that if we were in fiscal emergency, that would not necessitate that we would be at minimum, correct?
Correct. I think we have a school district in East Cleveland and portions of the Cleveland Municipal School District that are currently operating under minimum standards. We will now move to the cost-saving process, the next steps. Thank you, Mr. Weber. I'd like to do technically a review of where we are and where we're going. And again, currently the financial recovery plan is due to the Ohio Department of Education January 24th, approximately 2 weeks, unless we ask for an extension. The board action on January 11th, that's tonight, I'm going to ask the board to approve recommendations and resolutions for cost savings, and I'll give you those itemized list with financial implications attached. There'll be 3 action items under old business tonight, so after the presentation, my presentation, and Mr. Weber's presentation, then when we move back into the board meeting under old business and ask the board to vote on 3 recommendations on cost savings. The board, or the treasurer, will also ask the board to authorize the treasurer to apply for a 30-day extension from the Ohio Department of Education for filing the financial recovery plan. That's under item 3 under the treasurer's report. Following my presentation on what these cost reductions are going to look like, Mr. Weber will do some financially modeling for you, for the audience and the board, on implications of this if the board does nothing in regard and approves none of my recommendations, that we don't go to the public for additional money, new revenue, or new levy, and we do not make any reductions. In other words, we stand pat. I think he's going to show you the implications of going from $12 million in debt to an enormous amount. Frankly, we cannot do that either. On the board meeting, the next board meeting on January 25th, then we're going to have, we've invited and confirmed the representation from the Ohio Department of Education, Mr. Roger Nels, Roger Harden, to present on physical emergency presentation. And Mr. Weber will also inform the board on what we need to do, the amount of millage and or tax levy of new revenue in regard to the next issue that we need to get on the board. That right now that's being planned for August. February meetings will include finalizing the reductions, and the board must approve. That is pending. If we get the 30-day extension, we have to have the recovery plan to the Ohio Department of Education on or before February 23rd. We will have a board meeting prior to that, and whatever we do not do, or that's not approved, or if we have to go back to the board, we'll do that at one of the meetings in February to get further board approval and finalize that recovery plan so we can submit it to the Ohio Department of Education for their approval. Once that is done, then March through August of this year, we will implement the recovery plan as approved by the Ohio Department of Education and this school board. Where are we? Again, and this has been published time and time again, we are facing a $12 million deficit. The current cost reductions, and I'm going to go over these and review them again with the public and with the board. We've already reduced this deficit because of board action by $1.5 million. And the board discussed and approved some athletic reductions to the tune of $2 million. Well, actually, that was not the $200,000. I'm sorry, $181,000, and I'll separate those out for you. So we do need board action tonight. As you can see, the asterisk action items will be tonight. And current cost reductions and reductions discussed in the December board meeting. The treasurer tells us then with these actions we still have and are facing a $10.3 million deficit. We're looking for further Lorain City school reductions through cost cutting, and I will go over those items with you as well. Mr. Weber is going to talk about the contribution from the community, i.e. tax levy. I guess the first thing I want to do before we get into this and review these items is that I want everyone to be aware what my team, my reduction and transition team, what we've been doing. And I asked the team to put together a summation of what kind of work we've done over the past 2.5 to 3 months. And my point here is we don't sit around and say, well, what about this and what about that? There's a lot of thought. These are all professional educators. As mentioned earlier, the board said put everything on the agenda. Let's look and review everything. That's what we've done. We have a 13-person team of administrators and educators that are giving me the insight and recommendations. We've had 22 meetings since October, and we've conducted over 800. We're right now at 822 man-hours in putting this presentation together. So there's a lot of thought in this. We think that this plan that's being presented is the best plan that this board can do to reach a cost savings. Obviously, there's no way we're going to be able to cut programs, our academic program and our co-curricular program, our sports program, to the tune of $12 million. We would be at minimum standards that you saw earlier, and probably worse off than that. Technically, I don't think we would be able to operate a school district with that type of program reduction and academic reduction. And the other thing I'd like to say is that this board is also very, very concerned. They've been working very, very hard. This is not easy for them either. They're going to have to make some serious decisions tonight. I don't think any of them will be popular. And as you can see, as I go down through each of these, no one will be happy because there's representation across the board here of cost reductions. It's not pretty, and it's not easy, and these are not easy decisions for this board. But they have directed me as superintendent, and they've directed the treasurer to do an analysis and ask the superintendent to bring forth a reduction plan. With my team, that is what I'm doing tonight. And we will have several action items again, 3 individual action items under old business that this board will need to vote on. If you recall, we were at $1.1 million that from board action that's already occurred, board approval. For your review, that was 18 teaching positions that have been already reduced in force for second semester. 9 paraprofessionals positions were reduced, and we did some cuts in central office. Comparison between the past superintendent's salary and mine was a decent savings, and deputy superintendent's position was eliminated and will not be filled for next year nor the rest of this school year. That brought us to $1.1 million. On an action item tonight, item 1 under old business is I am asking the school board to approve the Charleston reorganization plan. This is ongoing, but if they approve action item 1, it's an additional $400,000 that gets us to the $1.5 million in cost savings. The Charleston reorganization plan, where we came up with the $400,000, is that, if you recall, there was a big issue in August about 3 academic directors that were moved to Charleston, removed from their principal positions to serve on staff development for our students. And it was written, I think, as an item that did not impact the general fund. That was not accurate. When I came on board, I noticed immediately that that money was going to have to come out of the general fund, those 3 positions. What we did is we, under the direction of the board, submitted a new job description through the Ohio Department of Education to see if we could get these positions to be paid for out of Title II money that had to be approved by the State Board of Education. They did approve these job descriptions, and last board meeting, the job descriptions were approved by this board. These 3 people are on the board agenda to be hired at an administrative salary. They will be out into the school district at respective grade levels. In other words, one will be representing primarily the elementary, another one will be middle school, and another one will be high school or secondary. And they're technically school improvement specialists that are going to be working with our children on staff development and school improvement, academic improvement. That will be one item that I'll be asking for approval on under the Charleston Reorganization Plan. We will be moving, and I've said this all along, if you recall, when I came on board, 3 positions were through resignations or taking new jobs, they had left the school district. One was reassigned. Deputy superintendent was not replaced. I mentioned that earlier. There are 2 people that are being recommended to move into the chief operating positions in human resources and technology and information. I've said all along that I need those positions as superintendent of schools to conduct our business. The positions where they are leaving, which are directors' positions, will not be filled, which just gives us a major savings of Charleston and additional cost reductions. Then we move into we have a line item here on athletics. In the December board meeting, the board understood and supported, there was no board action on that, they supported the reduction in the athletic program to the tune of $181,000. Those athletic reductions include eliminating varsity swimming, JV and varsity bowling, JV and varsity tennis, JV and varsity golf, JV and varsity soccer, cross-country varsity level, JV and varsity cheerleading, and reducing the supplies and material costs and equipment costs for those sports. Because of lack of action, we had to move and inform the conference by January 1 that we would not be participating because they're a year out in scheduling things. So our athletic director, Mr. Brian Corey, has informed the conference of that. They do understand our plight. There are other school districts in our conference that are looking at also reducing sports, so we're not alone in this. But again, you're going to see all areas of co-curricular and curricular and academic programs being reduced through our reduction plan. I will then now move into additional estimated cost savings. This is an old business item tonight under item 3, and I'm recommending approval from the board on this. Some of these items, we will come back to the board because we don't have a definite. For example, item 1, we could find savings of $375,000 if we close a building, an active building. How did we come up with those figures? We're talking about reducing 1 principal, 1 custodian, 2 cleaners, 1 secretary, and of course utility, heating costs, those types of things. That could be Masson, it could be Lowell. We could redistrict, because we have some low enrollment buildings, and close a building that way and use that building for one of our alternative programs. So we will be coming back to the board on some of these items. But one of the recommendations is to close a building in the district or redistrict to save $375,000. A parent spoke tonight in regard to eliminating high school busing. That's on the agenda for approval under this line item. This is 4 buses at a savings of $60,000. We were not planning on, $240,060 apiece, thank you. We were not planning on bringing the Chinese immersion program back. That's on the table, $60,000. And the Spanish immersion program had a savings of $25,000. That's 2 teachers from China on the Chinese immersion plan, 1 teacher in the Spanish immersion plan, 1 aide. That's a net cost because the treasurer figured in the unemployment cost. When we lay off a teacher or any employee, we have unemployment costs that does not factor into the savings. The itinerant positions, Mr. Williams asked us to relook at the fine arts piece. Again, if you have athletic cuts, you got to have fine arts cuts, you got to have other co-curricular club cuts, that type of thing. We're trying to be fair as we can. So we will retain some fine arts programs within our elective curricula. We're looking at reducing 8 art teachers, 8 music teachers, 7 phys ed teachers, 4 computer personnel, 6 media clerks, and hiring 31 aides to cover the elective areas for the itinerants that will be laid off technically. And then again, minus the unemployment cost, we're talking a savings of $484,000. It's quite a significant savings. Will we look for alternative ways to offer clubs and activities and those types of things? Yes, we will. We'll go to the community, adopt a school program, could be reinstated. There's other areas that I will probably bring forth as far as possible options to maintain some of these through volunteers, so that the board does not assume a cost on these supplemental contracts. The next item is eliminating the Academic Enrichment Academy. We talked about that earlier. We will have those students, those elementary students, move into their respective elementary buildings. So that's technically a program being eliminated. We're going to reduce, or I'm recommending the reduction of the Success for All facilitators that are in a building by 50%. Currently, 20% that's general funded. General comes out of the general fund. We'd like to make that 100% grant funded for general fund savings minus the unemployment cost. We're looking to reduce 4 administrative positions. We don't know where those are right now. It depends on what other programs are going to be reduced. The impact on closing a building would be one principal or possibly a principal and an assistant principal. So 4 positions administratively, and we're talking there building level administrators. We're looking at, that's a savings of $224,000. That's salaries, again, minus unemployment cost. We are looking to, part of this plan is to outsource. I know that's not a popular term in this union-led city. However, this would be $100,000 savings. It does not say eliminate the safety officer program. It says outsource it. This is one of the items that will be coming back to this school board in regard to researching what the feasibility of this is. Our major cost here is not necessarily the salaries and the hourly rate of the safety officers, it's the unemployment compensation costs that that we're experiencing because of injuries.
Is that workers' comp, not unemployment?
I'm sorry, workers' comp, thank you, workers' comp. So we'll be looking at that and coming back to the board. We want action here to see if this is feasible and that we can save money. And so there'll be more details of that at a later board meeting. The supplemental contracts, non-athletic, would be $230,000 savings. That would be pretty much everything across the board except marching band and elementary safety patrols. And again, I would look at other options as far as being able to save some of those supplemental contracts that would not incur a general fund cost. So you can see that these are major reductions in cost savings to the district. We only get funded for half-day kindergarten by the state of Ohio. We're going to seriously look at implementing half-day kindergarten next year rather than full day. That's reducing 12.5 teachers. Again, minus unemployment costs for a major savings of $737,000. 2.7 savings, unfortunately, in a major reduction in force across the board to all employees. I think everyone knows here the majority of those employees would be the teachers. This would get us to an additional $5.5 million in savings. Next slide. With that being said, and if these recommendations are approved tonight, again, and to review, we have a $12 million deficit. Current cost reductions, we've made $1.5 million. The discussed reductions from 12-14, and with those reductions, we are still looking at a $10.3 million in deficit. If the board approves the additional reductions tonight, we're talking about $5.6 million, and this still leaves us with a budget deficit of $4.7 million. That's doable in the sense of meeting the $12 million deficit if we get additional contributions from this community, meaning new revenue. And Mr. Weber is going to go through that process with you on financially modeling and give you some impact in regard to where we are. If we do nothing, what happens? Mr. Weber.
Thank you, sir. We have talked, this is the current 5-year forecast. I put the 4 years for immediate 4 years out there for us. If we do nothing, our deficits are what you see there, $12 million deficit, which grows to 26, which grows to 41, which grows to 59. And if you just think about it, if every year you don't fix that revenue minus expense issue, it just compounds itself every year. That's the kind of problem we're facing right now. Dr. Bram just presented some cost reductions. So if we do implement those items in the plan, you can see the deficits out there for those upcoming years. We're still short. And as we talked for the last couple of years, we're trying to pass the levy and do some other things, and we haven't passed the levy in almost 20 years now. It's a compounding problem of money for us with cost increases and whatnot. So I did some financial modeling. I'll show you the PowerPoint slide. Let's just say, for example, that the community would pass a levy bringing in about $3 million, something like that. You can see we're negative in 12-13, we're negative in 13-14, but now we're starting to ease out of that deficit crunch in a couple of years from now. So what I wanted to show the board. We've done some financial modeling in the past. I put you can see the line there that says ending fund balance after encumbrances. You can see the $4.7 million deficit and the $5.4 million deficit, and it grows. So let's just say that we can type some numbers in here for some levies, and then as a reminder, the next available levy is August, and there's also one in November. If we're going to have a levy in the ballot in August, we'd have to have all the papers done, all the approvals, the board approvals, the decisions by, I would say sometime in March or early April. And then the paperwork is due about roughly 90 days before the election cycle. So you back it up from July, and then June, and then May. You're talking like, I think it's April 29th, paperwork is due to the Board of Elections for the August levy cycle. I'm recommending that we take a strong look at that, because if we do not make some reductions in the cost structure, if we don't pass a levy, like I said before, the problem just keeps getting bigger. But what we can do is do some modeling and not decide this evening, maybe at the next meeting or one in February. Let's just say we do a 5 mil levy. A 5 mil levy costs the taxpayers with a $100,000 home about $150 a year extra, about $13 more a month. You can see we're starting to ease out of that deficit. That ending funded balance line there is starting to get a little bit more manageable. Okay, and the district is still worked very hard trying to find some more cost reductions. We could also do some of the modeling and say, just for presentation purposes, let's say we did a 3 mil levy and a half percent income tax, something like that. We had an earned income tax levy in the ballot the last time. So those are things we can play with and model, not tonight, but just at a later moment, which shows some of the things that we can do, okay? And see what's palatable, what some options that we have. So back to the presentation now.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
I'm sorry. With that modeling, what would, if it were a 3 mil or a 4 mil levy, how many years would it be before we would resurface in the black? I think you showed with the 5 mil, it was maybe 3 years off that we would be in positive.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lim, you said how much again?
Let's just do a 3, 4, and a 5 just for comparison for us. If we
That's
could.
a 3 mil levy. We're still in the red there.
Right.
For a
So
3
that's
mil
15,
levy.
16.
Yep.
Can you show when we would be in the black Or would not be enough for us ever to get into the black?
Well, you have to find the reductions to get out there. Until red becomes black, you're not out.
Right.
Okay. So if you did a 4 mil levy, now you're out, and if the assumptions
15,
hold
16.
true, you're out of it in 15, 16.
Now, with that, would we then anticipate that in 16, 17, we would have a larger surplus continuously?
Yes,
Okay.
but they'll also, you know, keep in mind too, the length of time for the levy. And the thing that comes into play is we have a renewal that comes up every 5 years. So there's that voter fatigue out there. You gotta make sure figure out how to do that so it minimizes the impact also.
Thank you.
Yeah. And when I would do this thing, maybe more of a solidify for us, I'll put that out there a couple more years, we can take a look at it. Yeah.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
I think we are missing another revenue source, and I'm wondering, in future modeling, if you would show the impact on student enrollment increases. Say that for the 2012-2013 school year. And this is where we would need the community, especially parents who are still trusting us to educate their children. What would happen if we had a student enrollment increase in the 2012-2013 school year of 200 students? I'm not asking you to do that tonight. You're going to have to come up with some kind of an average, because I'm looking at, as you know, state assistance, which we lose when we lose students. Because I think if we can do a combination of revenue sources, not just tax levies, but, you know, I mean, Kmart or Walmart would not raise their prices to increase their customer base. They would increase sales. They would do things to draw people to their stores. We have so much and it always has for the 30 years I've been volunteering for this school district. It has always just driven me up the wall to see all the programs that we have that no one else has, but we're smart and we don't tell anybody. We're hiding our light under a bushel. And if we start promoting things, and especially parents talking to other parents, if we have lost 2,000 students in 10 years. I don't care what you figure the state, whether you figure it 5.7 million or 1,000 per student or 5,000, multiply that out, and that's where we're losing the 12 to 11 million. Am I right?
That's correct.
And if we had maintained the enrollment, now I know that we see Amherst in the same fix, and they certainly don't have the poverty level that we have. But if we put together, and I've said this to you, Dr. Branham, on several occasions, we need to get maybe a business advisory committee back going. We need to get back with adopt the school programs, and if we put together a marketing program to show clearly that students in the Lorain School District have a lot of advantages and do a lot of wonderful things. Maybe we can get kids back, and when those kids come back, they bring let's just say it's $5,000. I mean, what would Kmart do if they knew there were 300 people out there with $5,000 that they might spend at Kmart if they only could get them in the store? Well, I think they do a lot of stuff. So if you could, in future meetings, maybe just show us some effects of a combination 3 mil levy and 300 students or two.
Not a problem.
Can you do that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Also, Mr. Smith, in speaking to that, what your suggestions, they are in the works. We're putting together we're having a meeting this week on regard to retention of students and recruitment of students through our marketing and PR programs. That's why you did not see that on the list. I know that we're talking about reductions in other employees, but I agree with your concept that we need to go out and recruit. We need to retain what we have and recruit students from private, parochial, and most importantly, charter schools. And we're going to market the school district on what we have to offer. And I think you'll see a major improvement through our print media and our TV stations.
We have a TV station, we have a website,
Yep,
we're not using them.
yep. It will be enhanced.
I just have a comment, if I may. I think Mr. Ranum and Mr. Smith are spot on in terms of looking at the strategic opportunities to bring students back into the school district. I've spoken to many parents here in Lorain and who have children who attend Lorain City Schools. And there are so many different opportunities for children to get educated in many different ways, and there's a great story to tell. And I'm excited to hear that Dr. Branham is commencing the beginning of getting that story out and strategically letting parents and children know in Lorain, Ohio, what great educational opportunities are available in Lorain City School District. So I support your efforts in moving forward in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to follow that up with a couple questions to Treasurer Weber. Two questions. One is, my understanding is we have borrowed approximately $4.8 million as of today. And my question is, correct me if I'm wrong in terms of that dollar amount, my question is, in your forecast that you have up there, is the principal and interest repayment a part of any of the expenses for the 5 years as presented?
Yes.
And when year would we anticipate that $5 million being paid off?
Let me think. The first payment would be December 2012, right, Karen? And so it's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah.
Thank you for educating me on that.
I'm sorry, was that question about anticipated borrowing or past borrowing?
That's the one we borrowed in June, the $4.8 million.
So 2016 is when we
Right.
will zero out.
And then my next question is, we, as Mr. Williams had mentioned, we had talked about potentially borrowing $6 million. Is that
Yeah, there's no
included in this scenario, financial scenario, yes or no?
there's no additional state borrowing in here. Yeah, but actually, see, if here's the scenario. Let's go back to here for a second. This is playing around. This is not locked in or anything. Let's say it's the best we could do right now as of January 2012. And next year we're $4.7 million in the red. We have to borrow $4.7 million from the state for 2 years to get out of it, but you got to pay it back the following 2 years. You never get out of you never fix the root cause of the problem.
And I would not recommend that
Yeah, it's not a good
whatsoever.
idea. That is not a
It's
good
like
idea.
borrowing on your credit card.
Right.
It's a bad
let's
proposal.
call it, though, what it is. The word loan and borrow is incorrect.
It's an advance.
It is an advance on
advance, right.
state aid.
Right.
At the last time, when the two women were here from the auditor's office, and Mr. Williams and I had that chance to meet with them, it was unclear as to, perhaps with the latest state budget, there would be a longer payback.
It's
Has that
10
been-
years now.
That's a possibility, yes.
And you don't have to pay it, if we went into state, it's not really a takeover, if we went into emergency and we were able to get advanced payment of $6 million for the 2012-2013 school year. It's my understanding, under any circumstances, the first payment would not be due until the next school year.
Correct. Next fiscal year, right.
And which would give us breathing room. And I say we shouldn't use the word loan because it's an advance. There is absolutely no interest assessed. So is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we got an advance of $6 million, we would owe back $6 million. And it would give us breathing room to do some other things, such as going to the voters, but also working diligently, as Dr. Branham said, he's already got things going on, to increase our enrollment. And I think that is certainly, if we can put those things in place and then just take an advance, and we diligently watch that, in a couple of years, I think we'll be okay.
Yes, it's something to take a look at, but also they'd have to approve that plan.
Oh, I understand.
OD would.
I understand
And,
that. I know.
Because that structural cost reduction or lack of revenue increase we're trying to fix, that's going to come in there somehow.
Sure, I understand that, but
Yeah.
it's certainly, I'm glad that Mr. Harden is coming, and
Yes.
I hope people from the community attend, because there's, from what I have been reading on the state, it's not the boogeyman coming in. There's some advantages to it, there's some disadvantages to it, but it's certainly something the board has to look at. And he's coming to the next meeting, that would be 2 weeks from tomorrow?
He's coming the 25th, right?
No, it'll be the 26th, you better let him know.
2 weeks from tonight.
No,
Mr. Weber, since
we
we
just
changed it
changed it.
Thursday,
That's a good point.
we
Yes,
may need
you're
to
right.
check with him.
You are
If his
correct.
schedule does not allow, we
Right.
might have to come back for a special meeting.
That's right. So back to this slide, just to wrap it up, and recovery plan due to ODE to 24th. We'll ask for the extension on my agenda items. Get past the board actions, put those out there. Financial modeling we've been through. The board meeting on the 25th, now the 26th. With the presentation by Mr. Harden. We'll talk a little more in detail about our tax levy. And then that's kind of where we are on the cost savings process, next steps.
Thank you. We are now at report and recommendations of the treasurer.
Yeah, we'll move back. We'll move back to item 1 under old business. I'll separate the 3 action items out. So item 1 is consider approval of Charleston reorganization and planned, as explained in the board presentation, 3 school improvement specialist positions at no cost to the general fund, and 2 positions, a chief information systems officer and appointments, and a chief human resource officer. I recommend approval of old business item number 1.
So move.
Support motion.
Discussion. For clarity purposes, please, Mr. Branham, Dr. Branham, if you could, the positions that we are the school improvement specialists,
Yes.
those are not new employees, correct?
There are not what?
New employees,
No.
correct? And just so folks understand, these are the positions that you talked about in your presentation?
Correct.
Can you just give some clarity so everyone knows exactly what we're...
Yes, and you, the board approved the new job descriptions that were previously approved by the Ohio Department of Education that could be embedded into the Title II monies. And again, those salaries will be paid through Title II, not an impact on the general fund. Those are rate groups as established, and step 1s for 260 days, 2-year contracts.
Thank you.
And also, none of these employees in item 1 are new.
That's correct.
And the 2, the chief information officer and chief human resource officer, were formerly assistant.
They were formerly
And-
directors.
And they have moved up, and their positions are not being filled.
That is correct.
And that is where the savings is coming from.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
It's part of that $400,000 that the board directed
Right,
me to
okay.
reduce out of Charleston.
And also, is it correct to assume that these 2 chief officer positions are at the lowest
Yes.
of that grid?
Step 1 of Group A.
Any more discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fels?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. We move on to item 2. Again, as part of the December 14th board discussion, the board was supportive of doing some athletic reductions. Is recommended to approve the athletic department reductions, and I want to reflect that in the minutes of this motion, to include the following, and that's the list of sports that I mentioned in the presentations. So please bear with me again. Recommend approve athletic department reductions, including the following: varsity swimming, JV and varsity bowling, JV and varsity tennis, JV and varsity golf, JV and varsity soccer, varsity cross country, JV and varsity cheerleading, and supplies, materials, and equipment linked to those sports programs. I recommend approval of old business item 2.
So move.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fels?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
I recommend approval of old business item number 3.
I would support that with additional language, which would simply be as presented in the, whatever you called that part of the program you did. Because the overhead slides, these, will become part of the minutes, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So then we will have a written record of the costs, all of the things without adding them here. So I would, you know, support the recommendation based on the presentation, whatever you call that, the deficit, cost-saving plan presentation.
Yes. I concur.
Did you get that, Mr.
Is there a
Weber?
second?
So are we amending this?
No,
three?
I'm
just
just making a motion with the addition.
Yeah.
I don't know, we can do it both ways, but I'm just trying to simplify.
I'll just
and
make
add-
sure that that's included in the minutes
Yeah,
as requested.
yeah.
As a practice, I've been putting the board minutes in the minute book. I mean, the
I know you have,
presentations
but
in the
I
minute
want,
book.
I want the public to know that too.
And I will also put that presentation on the website
Okay.
for us.
Tomorrow you can, and it will be on whenever the board meeting runs on Channel 20.
Yeah.
Is
So
there a
will
second?
be community access. I don't know if is my motion all right?
Your motion is correct. Is there a second? We need a second before we can have a discussion.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
I got a couple questions.
Mr. Demakia?
I know you stated that we are going to come back with some more information on certain items on here, but the motion clearly is to reduce these separate items from the district, correct?
Yes.
So am I clear to say that the safety officer program being outsourced, if that is approved, that is going to happen? Because there are a couple things on this list that I have some questions, and I'm not comfortable voting on, number one, outsourcing the safety officers without getting those answered. And the other couple questions I have is the Success for All program. So, you know, again, if we approve this motion and move forward with it, I read this as being the reduction in the cost savings plan for this district, so therefore, if it is approved, it will happen, correct?
It gives me as superintendent the authority to move on certainly the possibility. For example, close a school building, I have to come back to this school board and say the building that our facilities department recommend is Masson School, for example. With the savings, we'd have to have an action item on that approving the closing of that particular building. Same thing with the safety officer program, which is one of your concerns. If I cannot, after discussing with other vendors, that I cannot come up with let's say it's a break-even concept, then I'll come back to this board and say that cannot be done. I want to make assurances that those safety officers, all of our trained safety officers that have been trained by this school district, will be hired by this firm, and they'll have jobs, and that they can guarantee us coverage of all of our buildings so that we do not see a reduction in services to our program. So what I'm asking for here is approval to begin the cost savings plan in this item. Some will, when you do it, for example, like the Chinese and the Spanish immersion program, that's a done deal. I will come back on the itinerant positions reduced, obviously, but it's technically a done deal. Success for all facilitators by 50%, done deal. Reduce 4 administrative positions. I don't know where those are going to be, whether they're going to be principals, assistant principals, that type of thing. So that would require additional action.
Dr. Branham, if I could, to help expedite us, because there's some discussion that we do need to have on some of these items.
Yes.
And so if we could maybe just have 2 motions. The first motion would be there are 3 things that you're going to come back to us on. We can make the recommendation. Let's make the recommendation on the others, and then have our discussion, because our discussion is not going to be about Chinese immersion, is not going to be about Spanish, itinerant, AEA, 4 administrative reductions, supplemental contracts on athletic, half-day kindergarten, and the further reduction. Those, once we decide on those aren't coming back to us.
That's correct.
So if we could make that motion first, then we can go into some discussion about those other items, and we will be able to, I think, comfortably authorize moving forward, so that when you come back with, we expect that you're going to try and find these reductions, but that way these pieces are a done deal. Anything that would come back to us, we can vote to authorize you to take the action you need to take, knowing that they're going to come back for the final approval based on those numbers.
Couldn't we just amend the original motion to?
No, I would remove my motion if it would help clarify and move forward.
I'm sorry?
I said I don't know what the actual procedure is, but I would be happy to remove my motion if Mr. Sturgill seconded Mr. Giardini. It looks like you have an answer.
Right, I think if you withdrew your motion with the consent of the second, and then you could do what
Right.
Mr. Williams is suggesting.
Well, I would have no problem if Mr. Sturgill has none in the second, so let's take it off the, let's
Okay,
just,
so then I will assert the motion, and that motion would be to include the second item.
Why don't you just exclude?
I would make the motion to exclude closing school buildings.
Exclude what?
Exclude closing school buildings in this first part of in this first motion. Exclude reduce SFA. Exclude safety officer outsourced. We can then go ahead and approve these others, and then go into our discussion on the second part of it, and then make the motion after that discussion. And I need a second.
So we're going to exclude close the school building. Yep. We're going to exclude reduce success for all, and we're going to exclude the safety officer program. Correct?
Yes,
From this motion.
from this motion.
Support.
That way, it's very clear, the authorization is to eliminate or take action that you've requested on those programs?
Support.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Demakia,
Yes.
Mr. Vels,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Now that we've dealt with that, now we can just kind of focus on the questionable ones. We know these have some sensitivity to them, and the sensitivity, and we've had discussions among board members after we got this information. Our need is for clarity, understanding, and a certain amount of accuracy in terms of the numbers. So none of these pieces you've been able to really investigate because you haven't had the authorization to do so.
That's correct.
So what we would receive from you is, now if we give you the authority to engage in your process, you would come back to us with specific numbers, what the costs are. For example, with the building, we would know specific building that we intend to close, how we plan to then augment those students to other buildings. As it relates to the SFA, we're going to need to know, what does 50% mean? I think I understood there was 20% that's in the general fund. What does that mean in terms of program delivery? How does that impact the overall program? Does that mean that some grade levels wouldn't get it, some grade levels would? So we would need to know exactly what that reduction means in terms of the program delivery. And then with relationship to the safety officer, and please, anybody jump in if I miss pieces here, what the real savings are. Are we really comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges? We know we're going to lose something, but what are we losing? How does that impact safety? And of course, who would potentially be delivering these services? We don't even know that at this stage. And how would that affect our present employees? It's indicated here that there would be a reduction, I think, or some portion of the program outsourced. We would still have some portion of the program still in-house, be it the director or whatever. What does that exactly mean? And what are the actual dollars? Because what we have to do is we have to determine, does that dollar savings work against what we may lose?
And so we can move forward, why don't we just have a motion crafted instructing the superintendent to proceed with these possible reductions and come back to the board because we do need more detail. And I think we need to get more information, but you can't get to it until we instruct you to move forward.
Correct.
So on the remaining items, I think all we need is a motion to instruct Ed to move forward and come back to the board.
Do we even need a motion, or do we just need to give?
Well, I think we need a motion because we've separated these.
He needs a motion.
Yeah, give me the authority to do that, and my team the authority to do that. And of course, you may want to put in there, or would want to put in there, on or before the second board meeting in February, because this plan is due to the ODE by February 23.
Mr. President, if I may make a suggestion. I think the motion sounds like what you'd want is a motion to authorize the superintendent to look at those three items and return to the board with a specific plan as to how they would be implemented.
I think you're right on.
Did you get that, Mr. Weber?
Well, somebody has to make the
So we have to
motion.
make the motion.
You can't do that.
All right, who's going to make that motion?
You're going to make it, Mr. Wayne?
How about if I read it, what I think I heard, okay?
Okay.
Motion, and this is the second motion. We'll do it first. Authorize the superintendent to proceed with the possible reductions of closing a school building, reducing success for all, a safety officer program outsource, and then come back to the board, I should say report back to the board, with a specific plan on or before what date? What date do you want?
Second board meeting in February, right?
Second board meeting in February?
Well, that gets it right close to when we have to send the...
That's true.
If we go to the first board meeting in February, it's still over a month away.
Right, I would say, and we may have to have a special board meeting, but I would say on or before February, what would that be, the 9th?
I don't know.
First,
I think it's the...
second Thursday in
Yeah, February 9th.
February 9th.
Is that a Wednesday or a Thursday?
That's a Thursday.
Thursday.
February
Okay,
9th.
by no later than February 9th or something to that.
Yep.
Yeah, that gives us almost a month.
Right. A little,
Okay. That's the second motion.
For all intents and purposes, I'll make the motion.
fine.
Mr. DeBaki has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Fels?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. And if I am correct, Dr. Branham, that only affects about $500,000 of this reduction, so we've still approved $5 million of reductions at this stage today, correct? 375,000, 100,000, 100,000?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, for the record...
And again, the only thing there would be which is going to be very difficult to estimate, but we can look at look back on workers' comp through our safety officers, and I can give you some figures. Obviously, we can't predict that cost, but we know we're going to incur some costs in that regard. So I'll bring you that forth, so it'll be a little bit more than that.
Thank you.
Now we need a motion for item 3, the non-excluded items, correct?
I think we did that.
We did that. We did that first.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. I'm sorry. You're right. We did. Yes, we did. You're correct. I got it
Wait,
down.
we're all following.
So that now
Right.
dissolves of item number 3.
Yeah, okay.
How about report and recommendations of the treasurer?
Okay. We'll do 2 separate votes here. The first one's item 1. This is the approval of the tax budget. The tax budget really is next school year's budget, first pass. That really is the 5-year forecast from October, so there's no real changes. So I ask for consideration of approval of the 2012-13 tax budget.
Motion to approve item 1.
Support.
Discussion?
Just so that we and the public know, what is the reason this is a requirement by the law in Ohio?
Required by law in Ohio to have on or before the 15th of January, an approval of the tax budget. Some counties don't even require this. Lorain County still does.
Yeah, but why do they require it?
Requirement so that it tells the county auditor we need tax money.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's why.
So when he collects the millage, we have proven we need it.
Right.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
Mr. Fallis?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
So I'm going to ask for consideration and approval for items 2, the November financial reports.
So move.
Hang on 1 second. Items 2, 4, and 5. I'm sorry, 2 and 4. I'll take 3 separately. Items 2 and 4. Donations in the financial
okay.
reports. Pardon? I'll come back to 3
I
in a
got
second.
you, I got you.
Okay.
So, did you make the motion, Mr. Damaki?
Motion to approve item 2 and 4.
2 and 4. Item 2 and 4.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Discussion?
Thank you, Mr.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Fallis?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Now I ask for the approval of the item 3 to extend that due date for recovery plan.
Motion to approve item 3.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Fallis?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
I know. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, let me find my place here. We're at new business.
No, we're
Superintendent
not.
recommendations.
Recommendations of the superintendent?
Yes, we need those.
Thank you. Items 1 through 4 are fairly routine, listing of 2 discontinuances. Item 2 is approval of new appointments through substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, or substitute health professional that we need. Approval of leave of absence for personal reasons, and supplemental contracts for the second half of the school year. I recommend approval of personnel matters 1 through 4.
Motion to approve items 1 through 4.
Support.
Discussion?
What is an intermittent leave of absence? It's someone who comes back on a short time, then goes back in. Is that, you see intermittent?
Carol, can you speak to that?
Okay. Never say that.
Question, if I may, I'll address it to the superintendent. When that situation arises, is it the policy to have an end date to the intermittent period?
I think it's based, Carol, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, based on the medical direction of doctor, written document, that type of thing. You know, like, it might be something like fatigue syndrome, and it might last 6 months, and they've corrected it, or, so I think it's based on the director of the, under the direction of medical care.
Would this be like FMLA or, okay.
Let me just save us from trouble. I don't know how many of you are familiar with a federal act called HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which was actually approved for people going from job to job so they didn't lose their health insurance. And it's grown into the octopus of federal government. And it has strict confidentiality requirements, which is why we now just put personal on, because you cannot, so please don't publicly discuss anything that has to do with
situation,
somebody's
right.
health.
Right.
But intermittent means it can come and go, whatever it is. Could go fishing on one day, but it's bad the next. And
Correct.
the question I have is, and I understand the mess you walked into, okay? Some of these are already over. Is that because things were not in tidy order in the HR department?
Well, maybe forms were not submitted, you know, applications late,
Okay.
that type of thing.
All right.
They're back to work.
That should be probably not a problem in the future, I would think.
I would hope so.
Okay. Now that Carol's in charge, of course.
If we could call the motion.
Yes, yes.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fallis?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Item 5, consider approval of modification of resolution of the early retirement incentive program. This will result, if approved, of a memorandum of understanding between the Board of Education and the LEA. There's a teacher that has met all requirements for her retirement and is entitled to the incentive program. She would just like to leave early. This would be a cost savings to the district. We open it up. If we do open it up and amend it, we have to open it up to all teachers that are eligible. We pretty solidly think that there is only one teacher that would qualify. There could be possibly 2. All we're doing here is allowing that teacher to retire early. and a high-paying teacher that would be leaving the district, and we would be hiring a teacher that perhaps has been RIFed if they're certified in that particular area, or saving maybe one reduction so that new teacher could work throughout the second semester of the year. So it is a cost savings to the district. Again, the teacher's entitled to that incentive program anyway. It was approved back in 2007. Our board attorney has reviewed this and supports the action.
I make a motion to approve item 5.
Support.
Thank you.
Motion to do what?
Approve item 5.
Support.
Any discussion?
In other words, all we're doing is amending the original memo of understanding to allow a teacher to retire before the end of the school year who has the right to retire at the end of the school year.
Absolutely.
And by doing so, we make a teacher happy and save money.
That's correct.
Thank you.
It's one of the best deals we've gotten all night.
Under operation matters,
We have to bring it to
We gotta
vote.
vote.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Smith?
I think we're all falling asleep, so I'm voting yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Fallis?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
under operation matters, items 6 and 7 are fairly routine. I recommend approval of operation matters, items 6 and 7.
Motion to approve items 6 and 7.
Support.
Second.
Okay, that's okay. He can do it.
Discussion.
Through the chair to the superintendent. Item number 6 was executed sometime in December. So my recommendation would be that we would have processes in place where contracts would be submitted to the board before execution, so we can approve them before, in fact, they are approved. So if we can get that implemented in a process or procedure, that would be great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Additional discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Fallis?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. New business. I do have an item that would be under new business that we will have some further discussion on. We reserved appointment of committees on today's meeting. We would like to have a board retreat somewhere local, somewhere here that doesn't cost us any money, and go over some specific things as it relates to committee structure and goals and objectives of committees, so that we can get a little bit more understanding and clarity at point in time which we would place people in committees. At the next meeting, what we will do is the committees that were where we had a board member seated who is no longer with us, we will fill those committee positions. But other committees will act as they did in the past. Whoever was assigned to those committees would remain there until we've done the new committee schedule. That's just an FYI under new business. Any other new business? Reports and recommendation, excuse me, I'm sorry. Committee reports and requests from board members.
I have a few, I guess, informational requests that I would like to direct, I think primarily to Treasurer Weber. And this is to help me get a more fuller picture of our finances and potential cost savings. I would assume typically the school district could have multiple year contracts for insurance. Maybe there are some contracts in place for special entities for our utilities, electric, gas, that can be negotiated. We may have special contracts for IT, professional service, consulting services, maybe service contracts on our computer equipment. And I'm sure the district will have some capital acquisitions that are not in the form of buildings over the next 5 years. What I would like to get is some information on contracts that their total cost in not in the calendar year, the school year, are greater than $50,000 when that contract ends. So we would have some idea as to when we might be able to renegotiate those contracts and really try and squeeze those vendors for some cost savings in order to help us with our deficit reduction. This can obviously impact us over the next 2, 3, or 4 years. So you might have a contract that ends this year, maybe you have a contract that ends in a couple years, but that would be helpful for my understanding on how we might be able to move forward to minimize our costs. That's my first request. The second is, I'd like to get a fuller picture or understanding of our grant funding process. So what I like to, from a financial standpoint, what I like to get is a list of our grants, the total grant awarded to Lorain City School District, how much of that money has been spent already, what the encumbered amounts are, and then any available grants. I'd like to have that spread out per grant on a school district year basis, because obviously some grants spanned over more than 1 year. So that would be able to give me a picture of what our grant structure is that we currently have in place from today on a go-forward basis, and what monies are available certainly for the next 5 years. That would be helpful. My last question is, I would like to get at least a big picture on our employee cost for the district, I guess by building and then by department, not necessarily by employee, but just total cost for building and for department for the current year and the previous 4 years. So we can see some trends in terms of, how much dollars we're spending by department, and building, just to help us financially analyze our school district, and look at cost reduction, potential savings from that analysis. Don't have any other requests at this time. Thank you very much.
And Dr. Branham, per the email that I sent to you earlier, in which all the board members have a copy of, there was a spreadsheet that we thought might be valuable to us that would simply indicate by position only, but not by name. For example, if we have 800 employees in the district, what those positions are, and it's all in the email, the hourly rate and yearly total or salary. Also, if they're in the general fund or if they're grant expenditure or for percentage of both, just so that we can actually see those kind of things, and it gives us a good idea of physically where folks are located. It gives us, I think, the information we need in terms of answering questions that we have for ourselves and fielding questions that we sometimes get from members of the community. And especially in this deficit piece, it's actually information that we should probably be focused on always, but this, under these conditions, it's something that I think maybe is a little bit more sensitive, and knowing that helps with what we're doing.
No problem.
Any other requests for information?
I know that Mr. Wood had presented us also a resolution along the same lines, and I don't know what we did with that resolution, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think I talked to Dr. Branham about it, seeing that being brought back up to the board as well, and having a further discussion on that.
Mr. Bye, I didn't hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. What did you say?
I think it was either last meeting or a meeting before that, Mr. Woods presented us a resolution, and I wouldn't mind revisiting that as well as the board.
Today or in the future?
No, in the
In the future, okay. Okay.
Our next meeting will be held January 26th at 6:30 p.m. here at Frank Jacinto. And we need a motion for adjournment.
Motion for adjournment.
At last, huh? Support. Come on, guys. wait.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Fallis?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools TV 20 WLCS.
To purchase a high-quality copy of the program you just viewed, please call Lorain City Schools Television at 282-8400.